Welcome to In the Middle. I'm Vykky. I'm a wife, a mom, and a leader shaping some of the world's most beloved brands. This is the podcast for all of us figuring it out in real time. In 20 minutes or less, let's get in the middle of it all. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, y'all, welcome back to In the Middle. I just want to say thank you so much for all of the support, the feedback, everything. I'm DMs, the text messages, the in-person, like the way you all have poured into me through this launch in the first few episodes. I am so grateful, and every single word of affirmation truly fills my cup and fuels me. And so at the top of this episode, I just want to say thank you, thank you. And this has just been such a fun journey so far. I'm learning a lot, and it seems like y'all are learning some things from me as well. So it's really filling my cup. So thank you so much. In today's episode, we are talking about becoming a wife. I have my handy dandy iPad with me today because this episode means so much to me that I don't want to leave anything on the cutting room floor. So I am going to be referencing my notes today because I want to make sure that everything that I reflected on my walk and that I have just been praying about, because I do think this is like, I'm going to give you a lot of practical things that I did as I prepared to be a wife, but also it wouldn't be fair to not share the spiritual impact and how intentional I was in my spiritual journey in becoming a wife as well. So I just want to make sure I capture all of this. I've been praying about this thing, and I'm just hoping that this episode reaches the right women and men. Pass it on to your sister, your girlfriend, your auntie, whoever, at the right time. So, and we know that God writes beautiful love stories, but faith without works is dead, sis. And this is work. It takes work to become a wife. And I want to share that with you today. And I can't think of a better way to share it than to talk about me, give you my context, my background as to why I feel like I'm even just a little bit qualified to talk about this topic. So I have been married since 2014. So we are approaching our 12th wedding anniversary. We've been together 13 years. And I was very intentional when I made the decision to become a wife. And so I'll share more about that as we get into the episode. But I also want to share kind of my background and where I came from. My parents, Willie and Debbie, they watch all the time. Hi, Mommy and Daddy, love you. Thank you for supporting. My parents have been married for 49 years. They will celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary next year, which is like unreal to me, especially considering where they came from. I always tell my parents, like, y'all are walking miracles. They both came from backgrounds where there wasn't a lot of money to go around, sometimes maybe not the most healthy environments, but somehow through their intentional partnership and God's grace and guidance, they forged together. They met in New York. And you know what? I think one day I need to do an episode where I interview my parents. I think that'll be super cool to have them tell their love story. So I will not spill the beans now, but it is candidly one of my favorite love stories of all time. But my parents moved to North Carolina, and that's where they started their life. And the intentionality behind recognizing that they were truly one being, they connected, they locked in, and they made the decision to choose each other every single day for the last 49 years. And so it's not lost on me the privilege that I had growing up in a two-parent household. My mom shares, and she shares this story often, and it kind of just shows you the awareness I didn't have about the privilege. I'd come home from school one day, and I was probably in kindergarten or first grade, and I asked very seriously, Mommy, why does Daddy live with us? And she was very confused by the question. And I'm like, well, none of my friends' dads live with them. Why does Daddy live with us? And it broke her heart. And now as an adult, it breaks my heart to hear that story retold to me. But I acknowledge that I got the opportunity to see my parents in their marriage, in their commitment, choosing each other, choosing their family day in and day out. And I know that that has had an impact on me in the seriousness I have towards marriage and towards the commitment of blending your life with someone else. It's not easy. It's not easy. I hope that folks walk away from this podcast with a good balance. Like, it's not my desire to fear bait into marriages or work. Like, it's work, but it's different, especially when you choose it, and especially when you choose the right partner. So it's a different kind of work. It doesn't feel hard, but it is an active decision that I make every day. And so I say all that to say that I do believe that I had a good launching pad, but I want you to hear my heart and understand that I was not marriage minded growing up. And I don't know if this is reality or if it is what TV feeds us. You hear this narrative that like every little girl is sitting and dreaming and planning her wedding. That wasn't me. I didn't have Barbie and Ken walking down the aisle. Candidly, the Barbie that I gravitated towards and the Barbie that I still have to this day that is now in Jordan's like play thing in her play bin, and I will have to fish it out and I'll post it on Instagram one day. But this Barbie, and I'm so grateful that my mom kept this Barbie. It's hilarious that she did. But this Barbie was my favorite Barbie. She had this shiny silver suit that is the jacket, and if y'all know me and if you follow my stories, I do like outfit of the days all the time. And more often than not, I am in a blazer and a bodysuit. And this Barbie really basically, she set up my capsule wardrobe. So she had this silver suit with a red bodysuit and a silver pencil skirt that hit the knees. But the trick about the skirt was it was reversible. And so you took the pencil skirt off, you flipped it around, and on the inside, it was a tulle. It had tulle on it with sparkles. My girl went from the office to the after office thing just like that. She had red heels, she had a briefcase, she had pie charts, and that was my Barbie. That was the one I played with. She conducted meetings. Like, she was very girl boss before girl boss was a thing. And that was the Barbie that I gravitated towards. So I share that to say, if you were like me and at 10 years old, you weren't having Barbie and Ken walk down the aisle, your girl was focused on her career. She was the doctor Barbie. She was the vet Barbie. She was the lawyer Barbie. You are in a safe place. This is your community. I think that at 25, 35, 45, whatever age you are, your heart can shift and you can say, hey, actually, I do desire marriage. I don't believe it's too late. And then also for those of you who've always been marriage minded, you wanted to be a wife as young as you can remember, and it hasn't happened yet for some reason or another, this is also the right place for you. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I have all the answers, because I'm still figuring this thing out. Every year, I believe that I become a better wife because I get the opportunity to collect more data. And so my goal is to share as much information as I can in becoming a wife with y'all. So I hope that we can spend this time together. I will do in a future marriage episode, and I will bring my fine husband Emmanuel on, and we will have a discussion about marriage. I think the way I want to spend my time today is just talking about becoming a wife, because it feels not lopsided, but it doesn't feel complete to not have the other half of the marriage in the room when I'm talking about my marriage. So today, I want to focus on becoming a wife and what that means. The first truth, and this episode is so meaty, y'all. I think we're going to go past 3 truths. Usually I like to stick to 3, but again, I don't want to leave anything on the cutting room floor. I strongly believe that as you're preparing to become a wife, it is your personal responsibility to intentionally prepare yourself, but God has to be brought in and he has to really be at the helm. So I haven't given my sort of faith journey story, and that will be an upcoming episode, but just as a little preview, I got saved when I was really, really young. I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade. And if any of you who kind of grew up in church know what that means, it's like an evolving thing, right? I kind of knew, I felt more than I really understood. And so, but I did not grow up in the church in the traditional sense like most, especially in the South, being from the South, most Black Southern children do. And so I didn't sort of rededicate my life until I became an adult. And through that journey, I got to really start to listen to the voice of God and understand where I wanted my life to go. And in that same sense, as I shared earlier, I didn't really think about marriage. Like, I full on wanted to, in my mind, I was going to have a sick penthouse apartment in New York, and I was going to have 2 dogs. I did have the 2 dogs and never lived in New York, but life's not over yet. I still want the sick penthouse apartment. But it wasn't something that was top of mind for me. So as I kind of like walked this thing out, kind of navigating my faith walk, I started to think about, and then honestly, it didn't really pop into my mind until I got in my first like true serious relationship, which was in college. And I started to think about what it meant to be married. And if you think about college in that sense, you have people who are like graduating, they're getting engaged. And I didn't see a lot of engagements in marriage growing up. I have an older brother who was married, but still he was so much older that it was just like, oh, that's what they do. That's what they do. It's not, something that I would do. And it wasn't until my first serious relationship that I'm like, this is the way people transition. Like they date and I know it sounds really like elementary, but if you think about the kind of perspective that I had as a child, my parents were always married. There wasn't calamity. I didn't see any of it, and it wasn't really exposed to me. I also think the older I get, the more I realize that my parents kind of sheltered me from a lot of things, which I am so grateful for now. But there are just things I didn't have to think about or things that I had to consider because it just was. And so I appreciate that covering from them. Anyway, as my peers in college started to get engaged, I started to loosely reflect on like, what does this mean to kind of get married? And I started to really pray and kind of meditate on like, Lord, if this is something that you're putting in my heart, like that's a mind shift. I had never, I did not think about blending my life with someone else and what that actually meant. So it's not lost on me that for those of you who grew up in the church, like I said, I didn't grow up in the church like that. You probably saw friends, family members be forced to a certain degree, strongly encouraged maybe to get married to avoid the ultimate sin of shacking up. This ain't that. And I'm really sorry if you had to personally experience that or if you even witnessed it, because it is really traumatic. And I witnessed it a lot in one of the ministries that I was connected to, and it makes me really sad. And this is not that. A sin is a sin, and we're not even going to get into that, but like I hate the idea of rushing to marriage just to avoid premarital sex. So, and I want to be as plain speak as possible that you should not make a forever decision around one specific thing. And so I just really want to say for those of you who have endured that, I'm really sorry that you weren't handled more kindly and more thoughtfully. And I hope that this time together can help encourage some healing. If you are thinking about trying again, and this is me making an assumption that like, because I've seen a lot of the marriages not last, if you are thinking about getting back out there, my hope and prayer is that you are now doing it on your own terms. You are trusting your instincts and your gut, and you're not being influenced by those who aren't looking at your life holistically and are only laser focused on one specific area of your life. So as I started to reflect and share on like with God, like this is a desire. I think I want to, I do think I want to be a wife. My church at the time was going through consecration. And I'd also have to say, I would be remiss to not say the church that I was a part of spent a lot of time, especially there was a series that happened in the summer where we talked about love and marriage and relationships and things like that. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but I would just share that sometimes as humans, we tend to overcorrect. And we don't often take the opportunity to eat the meat and spit out the bones. So as much as there are things that I can point out that weren't quite right in that ministry, there was a lot of good that came from my time there that really helped to set a solid foundation in my marriage. And so in the same way, while you're listening to this podcast, there may be things that I say that doesn't resonate with you. Eat the meat, spit out the bones. I am nobody's prophet. I am just a girl. Okay. So one of the things that I learned while in that ministry was a lot about relationships and how to build a solid marriage and the things to look for when you're thinking about a partner. And some of those things, again, Emmanuel and I will unpack it in a marriage episode in the future, we apply to our marriage and still reference to this day. So this church that I was part of, every year we did consecration. And for those of you who are not believers or a part of a church that does consecration, essentially it is you are fasting, you are giving back to God. You are making these sacrifices typically at the top of the year, and it is corporate wide. So the entire church does it in some facets. Some people do the Daniel's fast, some people do the total fast, some people pick specific things to fast from. I did the total fast. And so I didn't eat, just essentially water and juice. And we sort of tithed the days. So it was about 33 to 36 days if you look at it across the year. Anyway, we were going through consecration, and the guy I was dating at the time, we had broken up. And that was like my first big breakup. I did not do a lot of real relationships growing up. I just couldn't with the guys. I just trust issues. And so it was devastating. And I don't mean like devastating, like, oh, I'm gonna like cry for a day. Your girl was down bad. I was down bad. And I vividly remember, and I'm sure that this will resonate with some of you. I vividly remember sobbing about this relationship coming to an end. And it wasn't even like he broke up with me. I ended it, but I was still devastated. And I remember vividly being in the shower. This is in the middle of consecration, and just praying like, Lord, like, take this pain away. This was not the end that I expected. Like, I have to give it to you because this ain't that. Like, I don't ever want to feel this again. I'm not doing this the right way. I am giving you the will. You have to take it from me. So and I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, he fixed it just like that. Nope, nope. It was some time, and I had to truly heal, and I had to truly kind of reflect and say like, Lord, how do I do this differently next time? I never lost the desire to be in a relationship, and now at this point, the desire to be a wife, but I also am to a certain degree risk averse, and it doesn't feel good to get your heart broken. And so I told myself, and I made a commitment to God that like the next time I get this opportunity, you are in control, and you have total control in how I move about. So I wanted to make sure that I did everything in my power to support God and to prove to God that I was being serious about having a different outcome in my next journey of relationships. And so let's talk about what that means in a practical sense. So we talked a little bit about the spiritual. Let's talk about practically the things that I did to prepare to become a wife. So I recognized that my habits had to change. And from who I hung around with, the places that I went, the way I showed up in the world, all of those things had to change. And so, in addition to that, I had to make a decision about, I think we always hear the whole idea of like quality over quantity. That had to show up in my dating as well. So I wasn't going on many dates because I had to be intentional about who I was willing to entertain. So if you weren't a believer, automatically off the list, because what are we doing here? Why am I even going to waste my time if it's crystal clear that you aren't? And then also, I had to deal with those who said they were believers, and maybe they did believe, but their actions didn't reflect it. They didn't go to church. They made decisions that didn't align with what I knew that I needed from a husband and someone who would be the leader of my life to be. And so those guys also had to kind of fall off of the radar. I'd also say that the places that I went, I wasn't, going to the club. I wasn't kind of out in the streets in the same way because I knew that my husband wasn't there. And so by proxy, that changed some of my friend groups. And it's interesting because I had the opportunity to kind of reflect on like, oh, I only hang out with these girls when we're going out, when we're drinking, when we're partying. And it didn't resonate with me that outside of that, we didn't have that much in common. And so, hear my heart, I'm not saying like, oh, if she's not where you are in your life, cast her aside. It's not, this ain't that. I'm not saying that because I think that we have different pods of friends and different pods of acquaintances. They may be in your life because you are responsible for bringing them to the Lord, or you are responsible for helping them to level up their life. It might be a sort of up-down relationship. So I'm not saying please don't take my words and say you got to cut people off. If they're not healthy for you, then yeah, cut them off. They're taking up space and it doesn't benefit you. But that you could be in a season where you are pouring into those people. When I started to think about the guy I was supposed to be with, I had to cast aside the very surface things that we often look at. 6'2", no kids, straight teeth. He does da 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 da, like all of those superficial things. And yes, like you need to be attracted to the person that you're going to spend your life with, of course. That can't be the first thing. And one of the things that attracted me to my husband is that, like, at the time we got together, he was actually working at the church. He was serving, still volunteering. He was very active and he was consistent. His actions matched his words. And it's so funny now because Emmanuel even says that today is like, but do the words match? Do the words match? And that is something that he models a ton. Even now, we're 12, 13 years in, his actions match his words. And so I think that is something that women, we often are hopeless romantics and we want to believe in the guys that we love or like. We will get caught up in the words, but not really pay attention to what their actions show us. So if they don't keep their word, if they show up late all the time, if they take weeks and weeks to get back to you, it's like you have to acknowledge that like maybe he isn't the one for you. In addition to some of the things externally, I had to make different choices myself. And this is probably going to be polarizing, but again, I'm going to always keep it real. I made the intentional decision to practice abstinence. This is not a purity culture talk. I am not an advocate for purity culture. Thankfully, my parents did not push that on me. I have always felt my body, my choice growing up and into adulthood. But I knew that I wanted a different outcome. And so I did make the intentional decision to put that aside. And that was kind of, I believe now, hindsight being 2020, my first real test in the commitment that I made to God. Because as I started to share when I was sort of just meeting guys and talking on dates, like, oh yeah, I decided to be abstinent. I'm going to wait until marriage, blah, blah, blah. One story in particular, I was talking to a guy, just chatting, and I shared that. And he full on was like, oh, this isn't going to work. Dead in my face. This is not going to work. No, I will not do that. And good luck with that. He gave me a good luck with that. And he was very accomplished, handsome. Felt like he checked all the boxes. And that was basically the end of the date. And I was like, oh Lord, did I just make the right choice? Like I full on like panic. There's a little panic. Like, can I do this? Can I do this? And I felt this like just this calmness after the panic wash over me that I can only just attribute to the Holy Spirit that like, you're making the right choice. You're making the right choice. And so I doubled down and I just forged ahead. But I don't want to gloss over that and lead anyone watching to believe that that was an easy decision. But I am so proud of myself because I am living the life and I am in a marriage that I know has been blessed by God because of that one choice. And so if that is something that you are kind of waffling on right now, you're afraid to do it because culture, the world says that, oh, you'll never meet someone, is simply not true. It's simply not true. And I hope that men are watching and listening just as much as women, because I think that men sometimes get this rep that that's all that they're about and that's all. And I think that it kind of links into the like hyper masculinity, but there are many, many men here who want to honor themselves and the commitment they made to God, as well as the woman who will eventually be their wife. And so if you've made that decision or if you're thinking about that decision, I hope that this is just confirmation that you're making the right choice. Or if you're in the middle of your abstinence journey, keep going. Again, your body, your choice. I'm not telling you what to do, but that was a decision that I made. And I want to encourage those who have also made the decision that, you know, you're on the right path. The last thing I'll share in the bucket of this being your responsibility and your habits having to change, I think you need to also be honest about who you are when you were thinking about your future partner. I think sometimes we can be so desperate to choose a partner that we are willing to sacrifice and make choices about things that ultimately we shouldn't bend on. So if you've made the decision that you want to be a career woman, you are going to need to be paired with a man who wants a woman who wants to work. And in the same way, if you are like, I was born to be a mom and a wife, and stay at home, curate the home, set my family up for success every day. If you want to be a stay-at-home wife, that's a different you need a different partner. And I think in both ways, you have to be upfront and transparent about your expectations. Because, and this is largely for the men, if you pick a woman who wants to be a stay-at-home wife and you force her to go to work, she is going to resent you because she's going to feel like she's not able to walk in her calling and to be in her natural state. And I think we all can agree that if you have to live day in and day out outside of what feels natural, it's miserable. So I would say that he may check all the boxes, but if he wants you to be a stay-at-home and your dream is to be a CFO, it's not going to work. And just acknowledge that and accept that. And I think you both will, down the line, be thankful for the honesty that you had in the upfront conversations. I would say that, like, when you were thinking about choosing your partner, sometimes we get so wrapped up in the package, right? And I know I talked about the 6'2" of the everything and this and that. I want to speak to my women of color in particular. We're the minority and our partners are also the minority. And so if you desire to have a partner that looks like you have to go in eyes wide open that the options are smaller. When I was dating, I couldn't care less. White, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, Black, like I couldn't care less. Did he love the Lord? Did he have a job? Did he treat me well? Did he treat his family and friends well? Did he treat the server well and give him or her a good tip? Like, those were the things that I looked for in my partner. And I want to maybe spend a little time on the treating well, because I think sometimes we can, and this is for guys and girls, and this is something that Emmanuel has shared with me when he was dating. You can have someone who's super kind to you, who talks nicely to you, who treats you well, but then you see the way they talk to and talk about other people, or you see the way they treat people who are just rendering a service. It's nasty. It's ugly. Please don't think you're special. Right now you're special, but when life gets hard or when things aren't so rosy, that same behavior is going to show up for you. And so that was something that we didn't know this, we both looked for in each other and saw that we were consistent. We were consistently kind and thoughtful, regardless of the person or people we were interacting with. And so I would just encourage you that don't overlook the things that, even though it's not happening to you, it's still a red flag and you should be mindful of. Okay, so the next thing I'll share is that you really have to be honest about who you are. Of course, when we're dating, we want our best representative to show up, but that's not sustainable. So for my ladies out there who want to be stay-at-home moms and wives, you have to be honest about that in the upfront. You have to say, like, hey, I believe the Lord has called me to stay at home, to curate a home, to take care of you as my partner, the children that will come, and that is how you feel in your most natural state. I think the worst thing that can happen, and I'm really speaking to my guys right now, the worst thing that you can do is choose a wife who wants to be a stay-at-home wife and mom and force her to work in order for y'all to hit financial goals. She is not, it's long term. You may, if you meet in college and you both are super young and you don't come from money, there may be a season where she has to work for a year or whatever that is. And just make that a commitment and agreement together and say, hey, just work for a year. Let's get this down payment for a house. And then after that, I can sustain us. Whatever it is, have that discussion. But do not force a woman who strongly feels like she was called to be a stay-at-home wife and mom to work full-time, long-term, because it's going to drive resentment. She's going to be resentful of you because you are forcing her to operate outside of what comes naturally. And you're going to end up being resentful of her because you feel like, why aren't you working? I'm working. We both should work. And so having that honest conversation in the upfront, it may suck because you might feel like this person checks all of the boxes, but it's going to save you so much heartbreak and so much resentment in the future if you're just honest about it. In the same way, if you have a woman who is career minded, she sees herself as a CFO of a Fortune 100 company one day, and your heart's desire is for her just to stay home and keep the home and keep the kids and make sure you're set up for success, that too will drive resentment. And so, and I get it. I sometimes think that we feel like this is the best thing I'm ever going to get, and so I need to hold on to it. But this is where God has to come in, and he has to, and you have to trust on him that he knows the desires of your heart and he knows how he designed you. He numbered the hairs on your head. So surely he knows what makes you feel the best and how you are naturally inclined to show up in the world. And so you have to trust that he is going to bring the right partner that helps to help you reach the goals that you are trying to reach in your life. So please don't sacrifice that and don't take away from that. So I would encourage you just to have eyes wide open conversations and being transparent, even if that means that you recognize that you have hit an end of a road in the end of the road in that relationship or that dating season. Okay, y'all, I'm not gonna hold you, but we are already well over 20 minutes in this podcast, and there's so much more meat here that I want to get to, but I've made a commitment to keep these podcasts at a certain time because I too am a busy person and I like when there is a little brevity and good meat. And so as such, I'm turning this into a part 1 and a part 2. Part 2, you have to come back for because I'm going to talk about why it's important to have good community and specifically be surrounded by really good wives, why you have to work on you before he comes along. And that's going to get into the real practical, meaty, what you can do in preparation for. And one of the last topics I want to touch on is something that is really dear to my heart. And I'm even kind of struggling to talk about it. It's for the women who feel like they've done all the things and they still haven't met their partner. I've not forgot about you and I want to talk directly to you. And so in the next part, we're going to spend some more time talking about what it means to become a wife and how we prepare to become a wife. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope that you have taken some notes and we have so much more to share. I will see you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to In the Middle. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend and click subscribe so you never miss an honest conversation about life in the middle. I'll see you next time.